Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. We are talking about the thyroid-fertility connection today. By the end of this episode, you should know whether your thyroid is really normal or not. Thyroid health has been a big part of my personal health and fertility journey. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. I've been able to manage this condition with nutrition and lifestyle changes through 2 healthy pregnancies. So you're going to learn insights from my personal journey, but also a lot of experience with other women too. So before we dive in, there are 2 things I have to say up front. Okay. So first is that thyroid medication does nothing for autoimmune response against the thyroid. Okay. And having thyroid antibodies is an independent risk factor for pregnancy complications. So this means that even if your thyroid hormones are within optimal ranges, if you have elevated thyroid antibodies, increased time to conception and increased chance of pregnancy complications are still a thing. Okay, so we'll talk about the differences in supporting an autoimmune thyroid condition versus just thyroid function as a whole. But please know that all of the tips in this episode address both, and then I'll decipher at the end as far as what additional things you can do for autoimmune related thyroid conditions. Okay, so keep listening and learning. We're going to talk about supporting thyroid function and how you can support your immune system to quiet its attack on the thyroid if that is part of the picture for you. So let's take a step back and talk about what the thyroid is first. So the thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland in the front of your neck. It's actually an endocrine gland, which means that it produces hormones, and the hormones are meant to communicate with other cells in the body. This is actually how we set our metabolic pace. Every cell in the body has a thyroid receptor. So that gives you an idea of how important the thyroid is. And that metabolic pace impacts how much energy we use. So why does that matter for fertility? Well, there's no bodily function that the thyroid doesn't impact because it does set the pace at which the cells operate. And so the main thing impacting sex hormones could be the thyroid. And this could also be impacting follicle development, ovulation, the health of the luteal phase, et cetera, et cetera. So you know that fertility is an extremely energy intensive process, and how the thyroid is involved in setting the use of that energy impacts that energy intensive process. When the thyroid slows down, metabolic pace slows down, less energy is made. Okay. So again, remember that energy is the foundation of every body function. And if something is off with how your body is creating energy, it will impact fertility, because fertility is so energy intensive, and your body is designed to decrease energy sent to fertility when there are other barriers involving energy in the body. Okay, so fertility is more of a last resort because your body wants to protect you and keep you safe and alive. Okay, so when the thyroid's slowing down and less energy is being made, we notice that digestion slows down. When digestion slows down, we're not breaking down food as well. This can lead to overgrowth of bacteria in the gut. It can lead to constipation. It can lead to inflammation in the gut. It leads to less ability to absorb those nutrients out of the food that you're eating. The liver ends up getting overloaded with endotoxins and toxic load from the gut. This contributes to hormone imbalance like higher estrogen, PMS, period pain, poor sleep, high cholesterol, even. And it can even impact blood sugar balance. So when metabolic pace slows, glucose uptake slows down, and we have more lows in our blood sugar. We often feel more cold, less adaptive to stress. We might feel more anxiety. We see cycle changes, low energy. Okay, so it really impacts so many things, but it kind of goes back to that energy foundation, right? So when you're trying to figure out whether thyroid function is one of your barriers getting in the way of how your body is supporting fertility, I encourage you to think about these three things. So think about labs, symptoms, and basal body temperature. Okay, so when you're wanting to assess whether your thyroid is a barrier, first look at labs. Okay. And please know that a TSH and a T4 blood test does not tell us the whole story. Okay. Please advocate for a full thyroid panel. TSH is actually not even a thyroid hormone at all. It's a pituitary hormone. So the pituitary gland produces it, and it's meant to signal the thyroid to then produce thyroid hormone. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay. And the thyroid is meant to respond to that TSH from the pituitary gland and produce T4. Okay, so then that T4 hormone has to be converted into T3. Okay, so this is just a little bit of insight as to why a full thyroid panel is really helpful for learning whether your thyroid is actually functioning appropriately. So the labs to request in a full thyroid panel include a TSH, a free T4, a free T3, a reverse T3, which gives us insight into chronic stress because a reverse T3 is actually putting the brakes on thyroid conversion or converting that thyroid hormone T4 into the active thyroid hormone T3. Okay. And then thyroid antibodies. So both TPO antibodies and thyroid globulin antibodies, often abbreviated to TG antibodies, in order to assess whether there's any autoimmune response to that thyroid. Okay, so getting all of those labs checked is really important. As far as ranges that we're going to want to look for the thyroid, we want the TSH to be between 0.5 and 2.5. We want free T4 to be between 1.4 and 1.8. Remember, this is your inactive hormone produced by the thyroid gland. Your T3 should be 3.2 or higher. Your reverse T3 should be less than 15. And then for thyroid antibodies, optimally, we want them 4 or less. Okay. So that's your labs to advocate for and check out to see if thyroid's part of the picture. Even if all of your labs come back within those optimal ranges, consider your symptoms as well. Things like brain fog, feeling cold, having a low body temperature, low pulse, experiencing hair loss, irregular cycles, constipation, things like dry skin, acne, or difficulty losing weight are all signs that there can still be barriers with thyroid function and how your body is using that thyroid hormone. For basal body temperature in general gives us insight into metabolism, and thyroid hormones help us make heat. So before ovulation, ideally, we should be averaging 97.5 for basal body temperature. And in the second half or post ovulation, we should be seeing temperatures like 98 in the 98s, averaging like 98.4 optimally. Okay, so if your temperatures tend to be quite a bit lower than that, thyroid can still be involved here. Okay. But what if your labs are optimal and you have symptoms and basal body temperature issues? Like, what do you do next? I encourage considering a HTMA or a hair tissue mineral analysis test to learn more about your mineral status, because minerals are so heavily involved in the conversion of thyroid hormone and how that thyroid hormone activity is happening in the cell. So how your body and your cells are using thyroid hormone, right? We can actually have cellular hypothyroidism, which means that you can still be symptomatic while your labs are normal. And the symptoms are still signs and signals that fertility is likely being impacted because you're not using that thyroid hormone in the way that we should be. Okay. So what can we do if we have the symptoms? We have abnormal labs. Well, first and foremost, I recommend starting with nutrition. So whether you have autoimmune related thyroid condition or not, this is a great place to start. So we want to consider how much you're eating, what's going on with the actual foods that you're focusing on, and things like meal timing. So eating enough is something you hear me talk about a lot, but it's so important to make sure that you are eating enough. How do you know whether you're eating enough? Well, think about your energy. What is your energy like throughout the day? Are you having an energy crash? What's your appetite like? Are you waking up hungry? This is a really positive sign. We want to be waking up with an appetite and having an appetite throughout the day. Are you experiencing a lot of anxiety? Is it hard for you to manage anxiety and stress? This is a sign, if you are experiencing that you likely are not eating enough. Experiencing constipation and experiencing feeling cold, any difficulty with falling asleep, staying asleep, hair loss, those are all signs that you are not eating enough, okay? You can consider tracking your food to get a baseline of where you're at and then slowly increasing your intake. I help most of my clients increase how much they're eating because most of my clients, vast majority, I would say like 99.9% of my clients are not eating enough. So chances are you're probably not eating enough, okay? If you want to deplete your thyroid, you would undereat, okay? Because then this leads to having less energy to burn. Your metabolic pace is going to slow down. When you're not eating enough carbohydrates, you're not going to get enough glucose to convert thyroid hormone. So glucose in our blood sugar is a really important piece of how our thyroid hormone is converted into that active form to be used. Please do not fast. Fasting leads to higher cortisol, which disrupts the thyroid health and hormone balance even more. Okay, so eating enough is really, really important. As far as like what to be eating, a big focus on protein is really important for thyroid health. So amino acids actually help make digestive enzymes, and they help us balance our blood sugar. They help us support our liver and our detox pathways. And they actually make thyroid hormone. So if you're under eating protein, thyroid can be impacted from a variety of angles. Carbs are really important too. We don't want to cut out carbs. We need carbs in order to efficiently convert our T4, which is our inactive thyroid hormone, into T3, that active form. Without this, TSH goes up and body temperature goes down. Not good for fertility or making sure we're producing enough energy to support fertility. Fat is also very important for fat-soluble vitamins that are involved in the whole thyroid production or thyroid hormone production and conversion and overall just hormone production as a whole. So balancing your protein, your carbs, and your fat together is really what you want to be doing. We don't want to undereat any of our macronutrients. We want to make sure we're getting enough of all of them. As far as like vitamins and minerals, which are known as our micronutrients, So we need to be getting enough of these as well because they're very intricately involved in the conversion of thyroid hormone and how that thyroid hormone is functioning. So minerals are huge for thyroid function, which is why I'm a really big fan of HTMA testing or hair tissue mineral analysis testing, because we can learn where your body's at and how to better support it in all things fertility, but definitely for thyroid function for fertility as well. So a few ways that minerals are involved in thyroid support include copper. Let's start with copper. So copper actually makes T4, which is the thin inactive thyroid hormone, and copper helps us with iron, which is really important for converting thyroid hormone into that active T3 form. Okay. So copper is important. Magnesium is important because it helps us protect against stress and inflammation, helps us create energy, helps us transport iodine. Iodine's really important for fertility and thyroid function as well. Selenium helps us activate the thyroid hormone and it actually helps with recycling iodine. Again, iodine's a big part of T4 and T3. Sodium helps us transport that iodine into the thyroid cells and supports insulin sensitivity. Calcium works with magnesium to create energy. As a note, like all minerals are working in teams. So when I say copper, copper is very important, but we can't forget about its teammates. Okay. So even though I'm calling out specific minerals, we really have to focus on the overall balance of minerals as well. Okay. So calcium is working alongside magnesium. We have potassium, which actually helps sensitize our cells to thyroid hormone. So helps that communication work a little bit better. Iron helps us convert inactive thyroid hormone T4 into our active T3. Also very involved with copper there too. Zinc supports a conversion of thyroid hormone as well. And then retinol, which is a nutrient, vitamin A, that is really important for activating thyroid receptors and helping us convert T4 to T3 as well. Okay, so please don't go and supplement all of these nutrients. Focusing on whole food is really the best way because Mother Nature packages up all of these nutrients together in our most nutrient dense foods. And yes, supplementation does definitely play a role, but you've got to know where your body is starting in order to dose supplementation appropriately because it's really easy to throw off minerals, especially if you're over supplementing one and under supplementing another. So what foods can you start with? I encourage you to start with dairy and animal proteins. So our high quality dairy is going to be a great source of a lot of fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. Also having a lot of minerals like our magnesium, sodium, potassium, calcium to help support thyroid health. Animal proteins and seafood are going to be great sources of iodine, iron, and zinc, for instance. Starchy veggies are really great. So our starchy veggies are going to be our potatoes, our winter squashes like butternut squash, acorn squash, delicata squash. And these starchy veggies are going to give us a boost of potassium, B vitamins, folate, vitamin C, all very supportive. Sea salt is excellent source of many minerals, including our sodium, which is involved in how that iodine is being transported to support that thyroid health and function of those thyroid hormones. Fruit is a great source of potassium and vitamin C, which is very helpful for thyroid health. Bone broth is going to give you a boost of sodium and potassium. And then our cooked veggies and greens are going to give you a good dose of calcium, vitamin K, and folate to support thyroid health as well. Okay, so that's a good place to start focusing for the nutrition piece. And when we think more about the autoimmune related thyroid conditions, you have to support that immune system more. You've got to be more focused on that piece of the puzzle. So you can start with all of the above, thinking about your assessment of that thyroid, what's happening with basal body temperature, labs, and symptoms. But you can't forget about the gut when you are dealing with an autoimmune related thyroid condition. You have to support the gut because 75 to 80% of the immune system is actually in the gut. And we need to learn about inflammation, health of the mucosal lining, overgrowth, etc. Circadian rhythm and natural light cycles are also very important for supporting the immune system piece. So, thinking about decreasing artificial lights and screen time when it's dark outside, getting outside during the day more, trying to get that skylight or natural light before artificial light in the morning is all really, really supportive of the immune activity around the thyroid and just thyroid function in general, too. Sleep quality is huge as well. So, really focus on boosting that quality of your sleep. Okay. The goal is to help the body feel safe. If there's a reason that the immune system is attacking the thyroid, learning more about why this might be can shift this response in your body and with your immune system. So this is a ton of information to get started with. And if you've already been doing all of the above or have a hunch that thyroid needs a deeper dive, please know that you don't have to do it all on your own. Reach out. I would love to help you uncover these barriers. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.